Welcome to the Think Generation Wealth Podcast, episode number 62. Let me start off. My goal is for every episode is to always start off with gratitude and appreciation. And anybody that's listening to this podcast today, I really appreciate you taking your time, because time is two things that's hard for people to give up: their time and their money. And the fact that you're giving up time, I think I've been saying this a lot lately, but I mean it. The fact that you're taking the time to listen to this episode is my goal and my duty to try my best to deliver the best content possibly. Knowingly that content is just a click a button away. You can just actually just look on your phone. You can look at your computer, tablet, whatever, and you can just search any type of topic you're looking for. But we live in a world where it's easy to absorb so much information but take less action. So the fact that if I can help narrow down all of this noise that's going around us, then hopefully it's always of value. So first of all, I appreciate you taking the time, and gratitude. As I look at 2022, so today's episode is just going to be a reflection of 2021 and 2022. I know plenty of podcasts are already starting to do that or have done that, but for me, I think it's very important to be, transparent, especially when you're going an audience or someone's listening to you. Is you want to be as transparent and you want to be as open as much as you can. So there is part of your life you're going to shelter, but then there is part of your life you can let go. You want people to be able to hear what you got to say or listen to you and people want to be able to know you just like them. And me, currently I have a corporate job. I do podcasting. I record a podcast and my goal is to drop one every single week. And like I said, this episode is just going to be a reflection of 2021 and 2022. So we're going to talk about goals. And I would like to start off and say I don't look at my downloads very often. I try not to really focus too much on that, because at the end of the day, it's really about content. The downloads will come. If people like what you're talking about, they'll stick around. If they don't, they'll find somebody else. That's just how it is. There's nothing to it. So for me, I don't really focus so much on the downloads. Once in a while, we'll take a look and I'll say, oh, okay, so it's good to see this week I had 20 downloads. Now, one week I may have 40 downloads, and one week I'm at 30. So I'm like, okay, I just think of it as the fact is you're in a room and the amount of downloads you have is the people that are listening to you. So if you're a person, you have your own podcast, you have 100 downloads, you have 100 people in a room listening to you, because most of the time you're recording probably, you're talking to yourself and you're releasing this information out to people. So now someone else is hearing it, because if you don't have downloads and listenership, it's really hard to really get a message out. But at the same time, who's to say that, you have 10 downloads an episode? So I'm just talking as far as podcasting just a little bit. So anybody that wants to start a podcast, start it. Go ahead and start it. So if you have 10 downloads, you're just hoping that these 10 people take what they've listened to you, if they listen to it all the way through. And sometimes a podcast, the thing about podcasts is different from, let's say, YouTube. YouTube, someone can just skim through a video. Okay, they watch 5 seconds, they may watch 5 minutes of a 20-minute video, and if there's no value, they'll move on to something else. Whereas podcasting, it's easier in a sense because it's not something people can listen through it all. So you can listen to your podcast through maybe your cook. Let's say, like for me, if I go to the gym or if I'm in my car, I'm listening to a podcast on Audible. So I really kind of started to I wouldn't say kind of, but I started to take a route of start working on myself more and more. So now I'm thinking, okay, is certain music that shouldn't enter, or certain things I shouldn't see or watch, because 2022, I think, can be a very big year for anyone that put their focus to it, including me. And one of my goals is, I was thinking to myself, and by the time, I would say maybe 2025, I want to be retired. So by 2025, I want to be retired and just have passive income, grow my passive income. So for me, it's focusing more on increasing my income, because that's not going to happen if you don't do that. But also not lose sight of what's important. The important is not, you need obviously you need money to have the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal for me is having time freedom. I want to be financially free. And I'm taking little steps, and I've started to do this before 2022 and say, it's time to really put this. I put it out in the universe. But if you work towards it, the universe will get, I read the book, The Alchemist. So I'm gonna drop some books on this podcast episode today. So The Alchemist, I think his name is Paul Coelho. I can't really say the last name, but The Alchemist is a great book where it talks about the universe, what you put out to the universe and you work towards till the universe will help you get this, obtain it. But it has to be something relevant. Can't be, well, I want to be, you could be, hey, I want to be a millionaire, and that's okay. But you gotta have, the reason you want to get to that point is you want to get to it, and what are you going to do when you're there, if you're there. So 2022, let me start off with, I'm sorry if I opened up the podcast kind of on a tangent, but I just felt this was just things that was weighing on my mind. And I believe 2022 has a great chance of being a turnaround year. We're dealing with worldwide. We're dealing with, this whole COVID thing. So that's nothing new. And I don't think COVID's going anywhere anytime soon. But we have to, even for me, but we have to be able to continue to strive. Because as I look, I've already been on this podcast for 8 minutes, minus maybe the music. And one thing time is doing, you can see that second is just clicking and clicking and clicking. We don't have that much time to achieve our goals. So the amount of time that you have to accomplish your goals is now. Because you don't want to leave with the talent that is instilled in you. So the reason I'm optimistic about 2022 is, at the end of the day, there's two things that happens in life, and it's light and it's dark. Whether you're rich or you're poor, whether you're black or you're white, etc., etc., etc. The one thing we all have in common is it's dark. It will be dark, depending on what part of the world you're at. We may be dark at the same time and not. Or there is light. And I know for a lot of people, the last couple of years, it's been hard. Whether you've lost your job, whether you have family members pass away in COVID, or you haven't been able to see your family, or you're dealing with some type of mental health issue, we don't realize we're on this planet and we all share this planet. Sometimes we don't think of that. And I was thinking that the other day, I was like, man, we're one big family, just different colors, skin, language. But that's the awesome part about it, because we all have a chance to learn from each other. We all have a chance. So if you're someone that wants to speak another language, there's a joke. They say, what do you call a person that speaks one language? And they say American. So you think about it, most Americans don't really speak another language. But I think is be great too. And then you get to learn from different cultures, being able to learn from different people. And who's to say one day you don't get a chance to go to that particular place? So I don't know. I think it's a good thing, but when you really think about it, is as I said, I think a lot of people has dealt with a lot, and to some people, it's been darkness for the last couple of years. I was reading. Sometimes I don't really read too much into like stuff like MSNBC, but in my current corporate job, usually that's the thing that pops up is MSNBC. And I happen to see someone that lost his mother, his father, his mother, his brother, and sister and aunt, all in like week span due to COVID. Could you imagine what's going through this person's mind right now? And I can only show empathy because that's tough. That's tough. So to see you'll have your darkness days, but the light must come. So eventually the light must come. Maybe we need to be more patient. Who knows? But it's not going to stay dark forever. So that's why I think for me is I believe 2022 could be the bounce back year for a lot of people. But it's going to take you setting some goals for yourself and you wanting to do it. So for me, I set goals every single year in 5 ways. First of all, health. It's important to be healthy because if you're not healthy, it's hard for you to function in all the other places and all the other goals you set for yourself. So health, I think for me, I probably like many people put on some of the COVID weight, but I want to take that off. I want to go back to how I was when I was a certain age, and I want to get back to that age again. So for me, health, a certain weight. So you have what they call SMART goals. The acronym stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. So I'm pretty sure if you have listened to this, great. But if you have not, you have what they call the SMART goal, and you can use this for goal setting to set your goals and stay in the course. And I would recommend this book called The Diff by Seth Godin. That is a great book. It's a short read. It's an hour and 20 minutes. You listen to it. I listened to it the other day, actually working out in the gym. And this book really, when they talk about staying the course, this book was really, it made me think that, man, there's a part of the book where Seth Godin is talking about how if there wasn't what they call a dip. So the dip is when it gets hard. When something is so hard. If it was easy, what he said was if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And the reason why you have the dip is because you have people who get to that point and they stay the course, sees the end result. They see it through versus someone that starts it. Let's say you're starting a business and it's actually, let's say it's a credit repair business or something. Right now, credit repair is hot out right now because everybody trying to repair their credit. And I tell you right now, I do that too. I do credit repair on the side also. But what he talks about is you have someone that start that, let's say an example, and then they'll quit. They didn't survive the dip. They didn't survive when maybe they didn't have any clients. Maybe they were marketing and no one's listening. Maybe they had free clients and no one's paying. They didn't see through the dip, so they quit. Versus someone who does see it through and now is probably making $30,000, $40,000 a month. So that's what he's talking about as far as the dip. So stay in the course. So when you set these goals, stay the course. I can tell you right now, one goal I have for the podcast is something I have not been, and I'll be the first to admit it, I have not been consistent with. The past couple of years, it's been kind of hard, but I'm not making any excuses. This is called, a goal for myself is to drop content every single Wednesday. 5 a.m. Central is to have a Think Generational Wealth podcast episode content. So there's 52 Wednesdays, give or take, in a year. So that means I should have 52 episodes or content for the podcast. The content is not easy. Coming up with content every single week. Anybody at podcast can tell you that. It's not that easy because sometimes you may feel like you run out of content. And I'm thinking about ways now to, okay, how can I grow the show, grow the podcast? But the first thing I need to do, if I want to have, as far as downloads, like I said, I don't focus too much on it. But if I was to start having on the regular, every single episode, I say about 200 downloads, I think that's great. Because I think if you had 10,000 downloads, if you have 10,000 downloads, sometimes the numbers are not, the platform I use Buzzsprout. And one thing that I may have not seen on Buzzsprout is that it gives you the downloads, but what's the, what are you getting to 50%? Let's say if you drop a 10-minute episode, is after 5 minutes you're losing half your viewers, or maybe you're using 75% of your viewers. That should give you some indication. Say, okay, so when I hit 5-minute mark, why are people dropping off? Okay, maybe the content towards the end is not relevant. So it gives you a chance to modify your show a little bit. Okay, but if I was to get 200 downloads an episode, I'm happy. I actually am. If I get 10,000, great. But it's not a number I focus on. The focus is really, I want to be able to increase. So that means Think Generational Wealth is starting to build a presence. And the community that I was talked about before is building a community of like-minded individuals where we're here to inspire and push each other. So Think Generation, for me to get that, I need to drop 52 content on the podcast, give or take, a year for the year. And then I need to pick a platform, Instagram. Actually, not, I wouldn't say pick, don't say that one. Actually grow your database. Grow Think Generational Wealth database. 10,000 subscribers. Maybe that's the goal for Think Generational Wealth. Have 10,000 subscribers. How are we going to do that? Okay, well, I may need to post content. Pick a platform, Instagram, LinkedIn, or something, and grow and be consistent. Be consistent in that platform. The more consistent you are, people, okay, all right, we know that an episode. One thing, if you watch sports, I'll give you an example. Okay, in the NFL, when they're in season, every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, they have a game. And guess what people do? People adjust their lives so they can watch their particular favorite team. We are programmed to know the NFL comes on every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday, and sometimes Saturdays. Right? If you watch a particular show, you know this show comes on every day at 11 a.m., whatever time zone you're at. It's the same thing when it comes to you guys think podcasts. Podcasts, you need 50. So if I need 52 downloads, I have to be consistent every Wednesday, 5 a.m. Central. A new episode of Think Generational Wealth should be out. Okay, so that's grow the email. How is that going to happen? 1 post a day, maybe 2 posts a day, 3 posts a day. Maybe I have to post 3 times a day. Consistency. And that's something that's going to be my theme next year. Think Generational Wealth in any business adventure I am doing right now. I'm currently taking a course on data science. I'm in tech. I still love tech. Tech is something I'm never going to get out of. I would even like to start a company in tech. And I'm taking a course on learning a new coding language. I'm a tech guy, so you'll hear me talk tech once in a while. Learning a new coding language. That's going to take consistency. Okay. All right. So let's start. So you have your SMART goal, which is specific, measurable, and for me, health. I went and talked about health. You gotta be healthy. Mental. This especially these days, and when you're hearing about the suicide rate is up, and people are just not. Mental health is important. I think this is probably maybe the most important one because there's so much going around at all time, and if don't take care of their mental, even for me, I know it's something that was not really talked about growing up when I grew up, but finding a therapist, finding someone to help sort out certain feelings, to draw out the best version of you. Third, spiritual. Whether you're religious, me, I'm not, but I do consider myself spiritual. So spiritual, you gotta have something that you connect with. Now, if you're not into religion or spiritual, hey, by all means, it's your choice, and that's okay. We should all have our own options, and that's what makes it great. Is we're not all doing the same thing. So smart, I think you're spiritual, taking care of that, growing that, making that a focus in your life is important. Number 4, financial. If you don't have money, you can't grow. There's no way you're going to grow wealth. You need money. And if you're struggling with money, you need to figure out ways to get more money, but do it legally. Legally. You don't want to do something illegally and then put you in more trouble. So you want to do it legally. Increase your income. Maybe cut down your spending. Work on your credit report. If you have bad credit, I've had episodes on here that I've recorded talking about credit. At one point, I started off, I was at a 5, if I remember correctly, I was at a 550 credit score because I was in college. I did terrible with money. I just didn't understand how it worked until later on. At one point, I went and bought my first car, a used car, and they were charging me 10% at the time interest. And you say, well, that's not that bad. Well, still think about it. What if I had good credit at the time? I probably would have paid 0 interest or maybe even paid 2 or 3% interest. That makes a whole heck of a difference when it comes to the financing a vehicle. So I spent probably since 2015, 16, I started to educate myself more on credit, started to understand credit. I started applying for credit cards, and I got several credit cards now. And now it gets to the point where now I've stopped and said, I don't need it. But, they're being marketed constantly. But there's just a certain point you have to stop and say, I'm done. And right now, I can tell you right now, I've made it a focus. And now I'm more strategic with how I use my credit. If it's not something that I attend to, let's say, pay cash for, or if I can't pay cash for it, that's in my mind. If I can't pay cash for it, I don't need it. Certain things I'm not in the business of financing no more. Cars, furniture, any of that stuff, because that means I need to have the money for that. I prefer to pay that in cash anyways. Now, if you have a mortgage, car note, probably that's okay. On the car note part, I may sound like I'm contradicting myself, but what I mean is not really to own. I'm been someone that's been leasing a vehicle. I've tried both, and I enjoy leasing. But is it a permanent thing? Probably not, because eventually, you just want to settle on something. I have a particular vehicle in mind, but I'm right now focusing on growing. the financial part, you need money. At the end of the day, you need money. If you're going to be financially free, you need money. You have to find ways to grow money. Number 4, and then the 5th one is family. And I think those 4 things, before you get to the last one, those 4 things are more important. You have to have those. And the reason I'm saying they're important, not more important in the sense of you have to be able to have your mental right, your health right, your spiritual and your financial. Because your family there may be certain experiences you want your family to have. They can't have those if you don't have money, if your mental is not right, if you're always stressing, if your health, if you're always sick. If those things are not in place, it's hard to give your family all of you. That's why it's important to have those things in place, like your health, mental, your spiritual, your financial. Then your family gets the best version of you. Now, I probably didn't go too much in depth into the SMART concept, but to really just give you an idea. So let's start with the S, specific, and I'm probably going backwards here. You're probably thinking, man, he's all over the place on the podcast today. But it's just, I'm actually just doing this because this is that's been sitting. I went to bed last night and I thought to myself, like, what could I really talk about in the podcast? And I know 2022, people are going to talk about, hey, you got these goals. And I've seen already several podcasts already doing that. But that's cool because it got me thinking, okay, man, I need to get my goals started. And I've already have my goals. Now I just create an action plan on how am I going to achieve it. So let's start with specific. So in your specific, you want to be very, very transparent. And some questions you may want to ask yourself in this part is, what needs to be accomplished? Who's responsible for it? What steps need to be taken to achieve it? And you can find this on Atlassian, hopefully I said that right, .com, and look up productivity and how to write SMART goals. And you have to think through these questions, and there's several questions you can ask, but these are ones that's recommended. Measurable. How you can't set a goal and say, hey, I want to be a millionaire, and you've never even came close to that. That's not measurable. Maybe that's why for me, I said, hey, I want to grow the podcast to 100 downloads. If I hit 200, that's way past mine. But if I hit 100 downloads an episode, that means right now I'm getting about 30 downloads an episode. So that means I've gained 70 new listenership. And that could be because you're spreading the word. You're rate and review the Apple podcast, which again, please help a brother out. Rate and review the podcast if you enjoy the content. If you enjoy it, it helps me get the information out more and helps me also move on the charts too. But also I appreciate it if you could do that, rate and review the podcast. Also subscribe to the podcast if you enjoy the content. Okay, so measurable. So my goal can be, well, I want 10,000 downloads an episode. Man, that could happen, but is that measurable? No. More measurable for me may be 100 downloads an episode. Okay. Now, if I'm doing 200 downloads an episode, that's great. So hopefully the people are listening to it, taking action. That's where it's about for me. It's not so much, again, it's not the focus on the downloads, but the downloads is a driving factor. It does play a role because if you have, let's say, 5-6 people downloading your episode, well, it's not going to be the same as someone that's getting 100 to 200 or even 10,000 downloads an episode. But you don't want to measure yourself to that. Maybe it may require you to work better on your content. Even for me, that's the same concept for me. So measurable. Number 2, achievable. Again, is this goal reality? Is this goal is something you're going to hit? Is this something that is possible? I mean, you can't say, well, again, I don't want to use that, but I want to have 1 million downloads an episode. That's not achievable. Right? That's not achievable if you only had 20 downloads. So that's not achievable. You want to make it achievable. That's why I said, okay, hey, you know what? 100 downloads an episode, that's achievable. That may require me, again, what I said earlier, put out more content. Be consistent with the content. 52 episodes of content. People help sharing the content, reviewing the content, rating the content. So these are things that's achievable. So to me, that's an achievable goal. So, and I'm okay with that. Now, if I hit anything past that, that can happen. And I appreciate it. Number relevant. Is this goal relevant? Meaning, so for me is using the podcast is what's the big picture? Well, the big picture of the podcast is to build a community of like-minded individuals, get information, help share information, and help people when it comes to generational wealth is realize that is something that is important. The concept of wealth, the concept of generational wealth is important because too many times reading, seeing people passing away and their family is left with massive amount of debt. So if we have to, there's a problem there, especially people in communities that doesn't have advantage and people that even look like me, is that it is something that we're behind. We're behind in the wealth gap. We're behind in financial literacy, education, and that requires people. If more of us were to get on a podcast and disseminate this information out, how much more advanced would we be? And not only just share the information, generational wealth, the importance of generational wealth, the importance of being financially educated, having a great credit. These are things that I myself, when it comes to, I can go to any, hey, based off your credit, because of my credit, get the respect. Now, if someone says, oh, because of your color, then that's on them. But if both of them, if I'm looking at two applications and both have 800 credit scores, there shouldn't be no discrimination from that. And that's why I'm working so hard to teach, even now, educating my kids on the importance of that. Teaching my daughter, who's 5 years old, I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I have a 15-year-old, teaching them the importance of that. Because when they go out in the world, if you check out my last episode 61, where I talk about the reasons your kids should be financially educated, and then you can't send them out and they're not ready for what's about to happen. The world is not easy. Life is not easy. So you're going to have to work hard, but you're going to have certain advantages. And that means being financially educated, learning about wealth. So that's the big picture here is to, I would like to have a big email database, and not just to send it with junk or anything, but just to get this information out and be consistent and hopefully help people. Time bound. When? 12/31/2022. That's my age. And my mindset is the clock is ticking. I don't have time. The clock is ticking, and now is the time. So I'm sorry. Usually I'm not on my single episodes. I try to keep it short, 15 and 20 minutes. But I think for me I think 2022 is, I just wanted to share a little bit my plans for the podcast. Also too, I think what the podcast is, I would like to see the podcast grow. And I would like to see the podcast grow and have real people who really wants to be part. Who, okay, listen to the Thing Generational podcast and it helped move them into action. And I also enjoy podcasting. I think it's great when you able to come onto any platform and release an episode. And hopefully you think that the goal here is to hopefully someone listens to this and they take action. Because I had to take, when I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, that helped spawn me into taking action and switching out careers. Now, the next phase of my life is to be financially free. And for that to happen is these things here, these 5 things have to be linear with each other. One can't be higher than the other. They have to all be equal. Gotta have your health, mental, spiritual, right? Family and financial. Gotta have those right. Because if they're not, it's going to be hard. So if you listen throughout this episode, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And again, I apologize if you felt like maybe I was going was really not consistent. But at the end of the day, I just felt like this was something in my mind. And again, I went to bed last night. I woke up. I said, what can I talk about in this podcast today? And this is what I felt is the importance of goal setting, right? You can use the SMART and just having a positive outlook of 2022 and beyond. It can't always be dark. The light must shine. Okay? And I'll leave you with this quote. For 2022, consistency is the theme for me. I've always had every theme. Last year was growth. This year is consistency. 2022, that's coming up. And the quote I want to leave you with is starve your distractions and feed your focus. Once again, starve your distractions and feed your focus. All right. Talk to you guys next week. Much love.